Hi everyone, my name is Dayan and today I'm going to be teaching you how to create responsive auto layout and how to actually manipulate with the auto layout when you are creating cards or anything else that needs responsive behavior. So let's dive into this. So the first example here is that you will see is that we are going to be showing you an example of how this is going to work. First, we're going to create a section just for our organizational purposes. And we are going to obviously relabel this, so make sure this has a correct, and we'll just put a new here. Okay, so we'll be building this here, and we're going to start from one. So I'm going to copy all of these elements, so just to save up some time. And once I bring all these elements inside here, then we'll create a button from scratch. So I'll just take the text. All right. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that we take these two elements, which are the title and description, and auto-lay them together. To create an auto layout, you have a couple of options. First is you can right click and you can basically go into the auto layout, or you can follow the Shift A, as you can see the shortcut over here. If you're using a PC, you might have a different shortcuts, so I would always suggest to kind of take a look what is showing over here and follow this icon. Second option is to go into the design panel and click on under the section of the layout. You will see this little icon says here use auto layout, right? So once I click on this here, what will happen, it will create a frame. When it creates a frame, what happens is also on the left panel side here, you will see a little icon here. This icon technically represents the auto layout, so you will probably notice that a lot of these icons will be in your design, so you will know that that layer and that group, it's actually applied with the auto layout. So that first starts is here. All right, secondly, what we want to ensure here is that when we go into the design panel here, we want to make sure that this is also set up properly, right? So the first, obviously, we can see here that we have a couple of directions. We have a vertical and we have a horizontal direction. We also have a grid, but we won't be using grid this time. And this is technically a group. So basically what Figma wants you to do is to create a auto layout and then decide, do they want to follow the auto layout or do they want to be a free form? Free form is equal to the group. So once you're creating a group, they will be kind of the same thing. Another video will be about what is the difference between auto layout and a group and when you should do which one. But for this video, we're going to continue explaining what the auto layout actually does here. So now that we have this frame here has two individual texts inside, which they're going to call them children, and this is going to be a parent. When I click on the frame one, I will be seeing here that I have some specifications. First, obviously, there is a position of where this is going to be. Because this is being stacked from top to the bottom, we're just going to keep it aligned to the top left. Then here we have a 14, which represents the margin between these two objects. So one thing to pay attention is that every time you're hovering something, one of the great things in Figma is that it always shows you on the screen what is actually being manipulated. So in this case, you can see 14, and when I hover the 14, it basically shows you there is the gaps between these two elements. Now, if I go over here, you won't see anything, but if I add 20, it will show me. But if I hover, it will also show me that that is the manipulated. So we'll just put this 0 and change this 14 to, like, let's say 4. Okay. All right. So now that I have this here, I can also obviously come to the frame one and relabel this and just type this as a title. Now that I have this part here, I'm going to see just to make sure that everything is good, nicely responsive. That's great. Then I'm going to come in here and take this image and put it next to it, so then I know approximately that I want it to be within this space. And then I need to create a button here. So typically when you're creating a button with the auto layout, the only thing you really have to do is click Shift A. Once you create a Shift A, the Shift A will basically create by default some borders. In this case, like all the padding, they set it as a 10, 10, 10. So we're just going to change it to 12 in this example. And then the margin doesn't really matter because it's only a one object inside. So we're going to add some colors, so we can click on a fill and basically decide to select the color. Now that we have a color, we can also go into the appearance and change you know, to some appearance. So it does have some curves on the corner, which I consider as a radio buttons, right? All right, so I'm just gonna make this fixed here for for fun, and then now that I have all my elements in here, I can just group them together. Now, when I group them together, it's just, I want you to pay attention to a couple of things. First, you can see here on the design panel that it says like a 3 selected. And secondly, on the layer panel, you can see that I have selected these 3 here. When you're selecting something that I just did from a screen, be very careful how you're selecting, because you can be selecting it like this and technically not selecting the frame 1 and the title. So I would always suggest that either you click on the side completely outside of these elements and then group them together, right? Or you can always go to the layers panel, basically define where they are, click on the first one, hold the shift and click on the last one, and that would select them all 3. Once all 3 are selected, you can click on this icon here or Shift A to basically turn this into the auto layout. An auto layout here. Now we can determine the margin between all the 3 elements inside here. So I'm going to put 24, and then I'm just going to open this frame 2 just to see what's inside here. So obviously I want to keep everything organized, so I'm going to relabel this as a button. I'm going to keep this image here, and I'm going to just make sure this is all correct here. Great. Now I'm going to change the name of this frame 2 as a card. Once that is done here, then I'm going to go jump into the design panel and have a look here, like what I'm going to do. So now that my card is set from an organizational perspective, now I need to take a look at these specifications here and make sure that I'm happy with the way it looks. So right now you can see that the paddings between the left and right and top and the bottom are 0. So we're going to set this as a 24 on both of them, right? So now that we have this here, this looks good. Let's obviously add some background here and then add some strokes. So just to make sure that we know how our card looks like. All right. Now I'm going to check and see the responsiveness. All right. So far, because we set this correctly, and once I created an auto layout, it already works really well. The same thing with the image. The image was already kind of determined that it's going to fit. So basically that's why it fits the container, right? In this case, you can see here while I'm hovering, it actually shows you on the screen that on the top it says a container, and in the bracket is a card, and then inside it shows you 2 arrows moving to the left and the right to define how, if you switch it to this is how it's going to behave, right? This is great. And now let's see here why this button is actually not responding. So because this button is not responding is because it has set to fixed. It says 212. So if I click on this here and I go to the hug, so you see what's going to happen. If I click on the hug, it is going to hug the text that I have in. But in this case, I actually want the yellow border, which is that whole button container, to actually fill the container, right? So now I'm going to click on the chevron and click on the fill container, and basically it's showing me exactly those errors that it's going to fill the container. Once I click on this here, this is what happened, right? So now if I go over here and kind of check how this is working, this looks pretty good, right? Obviously, you can make all kinds of variations out of this, but this is the final responsive auto layout card. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to know more details, please look at the description below, and see you next time. Bye.